publishing, so. And now we are. Okay, well, I'll give it a couple more seconds and then we'll go live on the webinar. Well, welcome to the June webinar for Global Data Vault. I thank everybody for joining us today. I'm Trista Perot, Director of Marketing, here to welcome you and kick things off. Today we have a really cool topic. If you didn't get to go to VeeamOn, or even if you did go to VeeamOn, there's so much packed into just a couple of days worth of sessions and events and all kinds of activities there. It's really hard to experience everything. So today, our two favorite webinar presenters are going to talk about the highlights that they took away from VeeamOn. So we'll do a little VeeamOn recap, and we're going to spend some time talking about V12 because that was the buzz at VeeamOn. So we're going to talk about V12, the features, what you as a user are really going to be excited about, and what we as service providers are also excited about. Presenters today, we've got a couple familiar faces. We have Stephen New, who is a Veeam Vanguard and got to go to some top secret sessions at VeeamOn. So we'll see how much of the beans he'll spill for us. And then we have Kelly Colwell, Service Delivery Manager for DataPrize, our parent company. So I'll let you guys take it away. Oh, a couple of housekeeping things real quickly. We are streaming to YouTube, so if you need to rewind this or you want to catch it or maybe you have to leave it early, the full recap will be available on YouTube immediately once we're done. Well, actually right now, and also once we're done. But then we'll also do a condensed transcript and put the video on our website as well, so you'll be able to catch the replay there as well. Go ahead and throw your questions into chat at any time, and we'll be answering them as we go. And if we miss them, we'll be certain to circle back at the end and get them then. Okay, guys, take it away.
Thanks, Trista. So VeeamOn 2022. For me, it was the first in-person event in a while. I know that Veeam was the same way. Last year's was online. So this was more of a hybrid event where you could be either in person or remote. You know, it's been an annual global user and partner conference. Obviously, they haven't done one in a little bit here because of the pandemic, but you know, these types of conferences are always the place where you can find out new features, play with the new things, see what's coming up, get a little bit of inside scoop, see all your friends, etc. They usually throw in some VMCE. When I say throw in, they host it, right? It's not free, but they usually have VMCE training at the beginning of the conference with breakout sessions and then an epic party, which they call a networking event. Veeam's known for having some pretty good networking events. So we hope that you were able to attend and enjoy that. So let's talk about V12. Veeam in general has really launched in and dived into the future of modern data protection. And you've heard modern data protection for a while, but it was really a focus, again, talking about the increase of cyber threats, how data continues to expand. Meanwhile, organizations are adopting public cloud, hybrid cloud at astounding rates, and they're usually not doing all of just one. We see a mix of a lot of different services. Security is always at the forefront. You know, Veeam is doing a lot to address that. So a lot of the messaging that you heard, if you attended any of the virtual or in-person sessions, was around security and things like immutability and ransomware and protection, and how Veeam really addresses that. This is the first time that we got to see the new CEO, Anand Eswaran, in person and hear him speak about his vision for Veeam. Danny Allen was also present for most of those, but again, focus on modern data protection with a lot of emphasis on security this time around. If you saw our webinar, I think it was back in March, we did a session with Jason Buffington, who talked about the trends of 2022 with relation to ransomware. And they highlighted this again in another session. So if you missed our session, go back and watch it. But it does talk about that out of the respondents, only 24% were not hit by ransomware. It's really a if not when, or I'm sorry, it's a when not if you're going to get hit, because ransomware is such a prevalent place in IT today. And the biggest concern about customers or from customers who got hit with ransomware is the inability to recover data. I think it was around 64% of customers were unable to recover all of their data, and don't quote me on the number. We have it in the report. But let's go to the next slide. 47% of the data was successfully encrypted. 32% of organizations paid that ransom, but still could not recover their data. And let's remember, if you get hit with ransomware, unless you completely wipe and re-image your environment, there's really no way to ensure that the ransomware is gone. We often talk about hackers and bad actors using organizations as an ATM. If you get ransomware, they hit you once, you pay that ransom, they'll wait for 6 months or so until you're low on cash and come back and hit you again, get some cash that way. But the biggest thing here out of this slide is that 94% of the ransomware attacks attempted to infect the backup repositories. That's what we're really concerned about. That's what we're here to talk about at Global Data Vault with our enhanced data protection. But we see this time and time again where customers will call us and tell us that their local backups are gone. Ransomware will try to encrypt backups because Veeam already encrypts those backups, and it cannot. It just deletes them. And it does the same thing to cloud repositories. So our GAP solution of enhanced data protection protects customers from malicious deletions by ransomware. All right, V12 update. So a lot of this stuff is NDA. We're not going to cover things that we're not allowed to talk about. So we will be talking about things that are publicly mentionable, up for public discussion. So if you ask any questions that we can't tell you for NDA reasons, we'll be sure and let you know. But most of this is going to be done by Steven. We're going to talk about all kinds of new things, and I'll chime in a little bit. So V12 updates with the console. Steven, do you want to start us off with MFA and some security updates?
Yeah, so first of all, everybody's going to be excited for this news. I know I am. But officially in V12, MFA will be released. And I can hear everybody cheering right now in the background. And that is a big time request that we've received from most of our customers. So MFA will be released in version 12. So the way that the MFA works is you will need a local user on the machine, and then you would just go into users and groups, and you would add the user to MFA. Now, keep in mind, whenever you add a user to MFA, it's on or off for the Veeam server, but there is a option at the bottom that says this is a service account. Turn MFA off. We obviously do not recommend that because it will turn MFA off for that one account. But if you have one account that maybe multiple people log into, that may be an option. But again, I would request that anybody who access your Veeam server, you create a local account for that user, and then you turn MFA on, and then you can just use your favorite MFA app to scan the barcode and set it up, and voila, it's turned on. And then whenever you log in with the session credentials, it will automatically prompt saying, hey, MFA is on for this account. Please enter your 6-digit code. You type it in, you can access the console. So another thing that is going to be released in V12 is going to be grouped managed service accounts. What that is any security accounts that you have that are part of a group. If you want to allow that group access to the Veeam server, you can add that group, and that group will not store a password because the groups don't have passwords. It's just a group of users. So that's another thing that's going to be added in the V12.
Good stuff.
Yep.
So now core, as a service provider and generally as customers who configure larger jobs, have a lot of virtual machines in a single job, it becomes difficult to manage those jobs and the data and the VMs. So what is Veeam changing in relation to per VM activities?
All right. This is probably going to excite everybody as well. I know this gets me excited. So now we are actually going to true per VM files. What that means in non-Veeam language is currently you have one job. The job has a VBM or a metadata file, and if you have to, let's say you have a corrupt VM, you need to remove it from the job, or you need to, you have an issue with just one VM in the job, you can't really run a backup on that one VM. Well, starting in V12, you can. So every single VM in your job is going to have a VBM or a metadata file. So if you do have an issue with one VM that didn't back up successfully, you can actually remove just that chain of files for that one VM, including the VBM or the metadata, out of the repository, rescan. You can run the job. Or in V12, Veeam is actually giving you the ability to run an active full on one VM now that they are moving to true per VM files. So instead of running an active full on the whole job, you can run an active full on only one VM.
That's pretty cool. I mean, that's a lot of disk space savings if that's all you need to do.
Oh yeah, it is a lot of disk space savings. And the other VMs that are in that job that aren't having an issue, there's no point in damaging those VMs chains or moving them out or even touching those. You can just run an active full on that one VM. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's good stuff. And I mean, it means a lot for us as service providers too, because obviously we deal with petabytes of data and having to manage that gets very cumbersome with all those virtual machines.
Yeah.
So here's something else that's pretty exciting, right? SQL Server has had some limitations for a while, right? So Veeam Backup and Replication comes with SQL Express, which you know basically you've got a certain number of VMs and a certain size of database. You run into performance issues, or just it quits working. So the only option up to this point has been to upgrade to a full license of SQL, which can be expensive depending on the size of the organization, right? And it can really change the overall cost of a disaster recovery solution if you're not only licensing the product to do it, but you have to license the product for the backend like SQL in addition to that. So what Veeam is doing is introducing Postgres SQL as an option, which is free, right?
Yeah, so Veeam is actually introducing PostgreSQL in version 12. They are also introducing the ability, once it is released, to import your existing configuration backup into Postgres. So if you're currently running SQL, the Postgres backup files are still BCO files. So you can still import those into PostgreSQL. So if you want to get away from as you mentioned, the SQL Express only supports certain things. One of those things is a 10 gigabyte limit for the databases. And that is what we see the biggest issue is customers hit that 10 gigabyte database limit, and then they have to upgrade to standard. So that will allow the customers to expand their database sizes and not have to pay the extra fees to upgrade to standard or data center versions of SQL.
Yeah, so if you think about it, if we were to take a configuration database and try to, let's just say we had to put it on another server. We didn't have the configuration database without the ability to migrate it to a new instance, if you will. We would have to reconfigure all the jobs, redo all the backups, everything like that, right? So I think I saw that this just gives it a little, you get a little drop down to migrate it or import it into PostgreSQL, right?
Well, during the install, you actually have a drop down for Postgres and also MS SQL. We're currently beta testing Postgres in our labs, but it's just a drop down. To restore, there's just the same process. You just click the restore button and just choose the BCO file.
Cool. It sounds pretty easy. All right. So, faster, better, more extreme, if you will, has always been on Veeam's list of improvements for every version. So what are we looking at this time?
Before we get to this slide, let's go back to the other slide, Trista. We missed a big item on that one. So we missed number 2, which is the ability to move VMs to a different repository or job. What this is a big item as well. So let's say that you accidentally added a Linux VM to a Windows job, and you want to move that VM from your Windows repository to Linux repository. You actually have that ability in version 12. You also have the ability to copy data to different repositories, and you also have the ability to detach the backups from the job, and it will actually show as an imported status on the left. So that is another cool feature. You also have the ability to, let's say that you want it on you create a new repository and you want to move your data to a different repository. You can actually move it at a backup level. There's 2 different levels. You can move a VM at a job level to a different repository, and then you can actually move the job to a different repository as well. So let's say you're running a job on repository A. Repository A is running low on space. You can go to backups, click on the job, right click on move backup, and you can actually move the entire job from one repository to another repository, and it keeps your REFS savings. So if you have any REFS, XFS, any of those savings, it does retain that savings.
All right, that's a really good point. Can you use that at all for archival of a single server, of a single VM?
Yeah, you can detach the single VM. I mean, normally what we see is customers wanting to archive jobs. So what we would do in that case is just detach the data from the job, move it to an archive repository, and then we can run another active full on the job once it's detached.
Cool. All right, so let's get into these speeds that I mentioned then.
Yeah, so the speeds are actually, with V12, you're going to get a higher compression rate. That's going to be 2 to 3 times faster and up to 20% better compression. Normally, what we see is anywhere between 1.2 to 1.3 times compression. So in V12, that is actually a lot faster. Also, another thing is your restores are going to be a lot faster in V12 as well. Unfortunately, I don't have the timings on the restores. I haven't been able to test that part yet. But we're also going to be seeing extreme compression, which is going to back up 40 times faster, and you'll receive up to 15% better compression.
Nice. I feel like we need to have one of those things that flashes extreme on this slide.
I'm sure marketing can make that happen next time.
All right. Everybody loves immutability. Basically, immutability is the inability to make changes to a repository in this instance, right? So we have some more enhancements. You want to talk about immutability, Stephen?
Sure. I'm just going to touch on immutability briefly. basically the way that immutability works is if you have any Linux hardened repositories, you can configure it with immutability to where that if you have any insider threats or external threats, viruses, anything like that, that it can actually go in and delete your data. So that will be, you will be able to set up your backup jobs, your remote copies, your backup copies locally, all that stuff with immutability moving forward in V12. The way that it works is sort of kind of it every time the job runs, it creates a new VBM with a timestamp. And that's actually how it calculates your immutability. So if I run a job now, it'll create a timestamp at 2:20 p.m. Central Time. And then if you have your immutability set for one day, tomorrow at 2:20 p.m. Central Time, you can go in and delete files. Next time your job runs, let's say you run it at 1 p.m., it'll create another VM with a timestamp that's going to lock it until tomorrow at that time. So that is another good feature that's going to be added to V12.
Cool. What's next? All right, more on security. Any show of hands of who uses IPv6? Not too many. Well, it's in V12, just in case you do. Stephen, what are agent restore tokens and how can they help with security?
So an agent restore token is, let's say that an end user needs to restore a backup. Sometimes you don't want them to have access to your Veeam server. Most of the time, you don't want to have them to give them access to your Veeam server. Only your backup administrators should need access to your Veeam server. What an agent restore token is you can actually go into the backups, kind of like where you go in and you create the restore media currently. You will have an option in V12 to create a agent restore token. And what that is when the end user boots up to the CD, instead of putting in the credentials to access your Veeam server, they will put in an agent restore token that gives that user access to that particular data set for their specific machine. That way, you don't have to add them as an administrator on your Veeam server. You can just provide them with this token, and it will just restore only their data.
That's pretty handy. Does that MFA apply to agents too? Is that what we're talking about here?
MFA is different from the restore tokens. The restore token is sort of kind of like I guess it is the same thing. It's just a token that's generated in the VBR console for one-time use to do the restore.
Gotcha. So we already talked about MFA and security groups from the login, the overall console. Were there any other security updates that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest news is probably the MFA and the security groups. The other thing is they are going to be releasing IPv6 for all Veeam components in the environment, and not just Veeam backup and replication. You'll be able to use IVP6, say that 15 times in a row real fast. You'll be able to use that for your proxies, your WAN accelerators, your repositories, your data movers, anything in the Veeam environment, you will be able to use it. And the reason why that's important is you can, let's say that your primary network's on IPv4, say it 20 times real quick. You can actually move the Veeam components or your management network, which is what Veeam recommends and best practices is to create a management domain. You can actually put that management domain on IPv6. Hey, I said it. For all of your Veeam components. And then you could just run that on IPv6 and then leave your primary domain on V4.
Cool. That'll free up some IPs there.
Oh, yeah.
Next slide. Okay, so this is near and dear to our hearts. The the Veeam Cloud. Sorry, I got mixed up with the Veeam Service Provider console for a second there. I pulled a switcher on the letter. So the Veeam Cloud and Service Provider program, I think is different. So we wanted to talk about the Veeam Service Provider console here, maybe so we can do remote updates via the remote console. Basically, anything that we can manage or that we manage, right? We can do remote updates. Does that mean that we can patch Veeam backup in our application remotely?
So this is one of those areas where I am going to have to sort of kind of defer and be careful on what I say, because this product is not necessarily green yet to discuss publicly. There are certain features that were discussed at VeeamOn. Some of the items that were discussed is, yes, you will have the ability to patch, manage Veeam backup repositories or Veeam servers. There is that ability. You will have the ability to restore from certain products. I'm not allowed to name what those products are yet, but there will be a restore option where you can restore products on the service provider side. But to answer your question, yes, that is Veeam Service Provider Console via SPC. But yes, you will be able to do some of these features in the Veeam Service Provider console, but I can't confirm what they are because I haven't tested it yet to see what features are in there.
All righty. We'll just give you a TBD on that one.
Yep.
And a wink. Right?
Yep.
So coming soon, Veeam backup for Salesforce, right? There's no secret that this is coming. It's another SaaS platform. If you haven't heard of Salesforce, I'd be shocked, but it is very wide known CRM platform, similar to, it's all cloud based. So we have backup for Microsoft 365, which is SaaS. It's all cloud based. Salesforce is another cloud based application where it's going to give users the ability to control their data, manage their own data within Salesforce. And that's huge because, again, there's limitations to what the actual SaaS provider will do from a data protection or a backup standpoint. So it will be using new APIs. Obviously, you can't have agents and things like that running with it. So that's pretty cool. I think that's gonna solve a lot of headaches for people. Speaking of VBM7, which is Veeam backup for Microsoft 365, right? What's coming up in V7 that we can talk about?
So if anybody who went to VeeamOn attended the Veeam Top Secret session that was at VeeamOn, they did do a demo of Veeam backup for M365, and some of the features that you're going to be able to expect is real-time alerts. You'll be able to get detailed reporting, which currently Global Data Vault does currently provide these, but you'll be able to get an unlimited view of all components and architecture and of the product. So without going into too many details of spilling the beans on on the secret of version 7 is, I can say that I'm very excited for this new product because I have tested it in my lab, and let's just say that it is a big improvement from the other components, and there is some integration which I can't detail too much about, but there is some integration that will help regarding licensing and being able to manage the product a little better from the service provider side.
Should we look? You mentioned some, it says right here, unified view and reports and stuff, and you mentioned some enhancements. Is that just like performance? We're expecting it to run faster and more efficiently?
Yes, you will expect it to run more efficiently, but the unified view of all components is more of a service provider feature where you get more in-depth view of everything that's happening behind the scenes. instead of logging on to all of your M365 servers to check the status every day. Why is this job failing? Why is this job failing? You can go to a single pane of glass and you can see all of this information.
That's awesome. Definitely very helpful for us, at least. All right, other Veeam highlights. Lab Wars. So Lab Wars is always a competition at Veeam. You know, they set up real world scenarios. It's basically a test, right? But it's real world scenarios where engineers can come in and they go through certain scenarios. And it's sort of like an open-ended hands-on test, right? They give you a problem and they track how you resolve it, the steps that you take to resolve it, and how long it takes to resolve it. So it's sort of like a techie fun competition. What's the grand prize for that, Stephen?
$10,000.
$10,000.
Oh yeah, yeah. So Lab Wars is a competition. Unfortunately, I was unable to participate in it this year because I was running all over the place at VeeamOn. So from attending the breakout sessions, meetings, yeah, I mean, you do go into the. It's actually hosted by the Veeam Educational Services, which is a good group of people. I spoke to Rasmus and Simon there a lot, which Simon is actually the Education Services Manager. And then Rasmus is Mr. VMC himself. So yeah, we actually spoke, and I was in the Lab Wars area, and they have the computer set out to where you just go sign up, go to a computer, you wear some headphones, they give you a scenario, and then you click the options in Veeam to get the configuration set up, and then you get scored, and they have a computer monitor that will give you your ranking. So the top place finisher, number one, does get a check at the closing party, or excuse me, at the closing session for $10,000.
Wow, it's pretty good stuff. So do you know if Rasmus ever took off that green suit?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
We have video. There is video of it.
So for those not in the know, Rasmus wore a very Veeam green suit. The entire thing was green. He wore it pretty much anytime he was on the show floor. So you were able to see him, and I didn't know if he actually ever took it off, but I didn't get close enough to smell him either. So we had breakouts on new products. You know, we talked about the Veeam vision for modern data protection, and of course the parties. The welcome party was pretty cool. It was a little bit more my speed. It was around the pools outside of the area, and you can see the picture here. They had a whole bunch of different type of performers. They had a lady in a ring doing acrobatics over the pool, and they had another one on a pole that swung back and forth where she did tricks on. And there were some, you know, tarot card readers and palm readers and things like that for fun, but a lot of good food and the ability to talk with people and meet with your peers and everybody else. It was a really good time. I didn't get to stay for the last party, but Stephen, who was at the last party?
So the last closing party, or the closing party was actually, we had Nelly and Coolio performing, which everybody knows. Well, I'm going to say mostly everybody knows who they are. But yeah, it was probably the one of the biggest closing parties, and one of the that I've seen at a VeeamOn. It was probably one of my favorite moments. Was the closing party. And I mean, normally at concerts, they have a barrier where you can't get close to the stage. There were people right up next to the stage taking videos of them. So, I mean, as you can see in the slide, they were pretty photogenic, and got pretty good pictures of them. And the closing party was just amazing.
It sounds like a good time. So for me personally, you know, my favorite moments are always the in-person meetings. You get to meet with people and share ideas and talk to folks, and and see people you haven't seen in a while, maybe people you worked with before. You know, in my case, I used to work for Veeam. I got to see a lot of people that I used to work with that I hadn't seen in a few years. But there's a lot of times, you know, it's great being able to do this and do webinars, but you know, there's something to be said for sitting down with folks and being able to have conversations around what they're doing, what they've been up to, you know, what they see in the environment. And you do get to see fun things like Rasmus in the all green suit and people walking around with lights and all kinds of things like that. So what were your favorite VeeamOn moments?
Well, my favorite VeeamOn moments was basically getting back together with people again. And you know, the in-person collaboration between the technical teams, going to the breakout sessions in person, getting to actually touch the products, um, going to the V12 demos and driving it around. And probably, if I don't think I could probably put my finger on one particular moment. I think that it's just the being back together, with the Veeam people in person, and also the technical previews of the new products that are coming out, seeing those in person, seeing the demos by Anthony Spiteri, Tim Hudson, Mike Resler, all those people that we got to see in 2019 that we couldn't see because of COVID in 2020 and then 2021, and coming back together in 2022 was just amazing.
Yeah, I agree. You know, from a technical standpoint, I always enjoyed that moment when you knew the big reveal was coming. And it used to be when Anton would get up on stage and you know, he'd start introing his thing, and then it would be the big announcement. That's always a lot of fun for sure. So when you're going to these things, basically what we've just described is why you should attend, right? The technical sessions, you can't undo those. You can't miss those because of their value. Access to Veeam experts and networking, you know, basically everything we've just said. So next year, Stephen, do you prefer Miami or Las Vegas?
I prefer Miami.
Me too. What do you like about it?
Vegas is more just, I mean, Miami is more of a relaxing environment. It's right by the ocean. There isn't 2 million people running around you, trying to get to the next slot machine. I mean, it's just, I think it's more peaceful just sitting out on your balcony at your hotel room, listening to the ocean during your downtime.
Yeah, and it's not like a half a mile from your hotel room to the convention center, right?
Yeah. So I mean, it's just right there. So yeah, I'm very excited. Anybody who came to see us at VeeamOn 2019, it was at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami. So it will be back at the Fontainebleau in 2023. So we're excited about VeeamOn 2023, and we can't wait.
Yep. And it is the Fontainebleau, not the Fontainebleau. There was a typo on Veeam's information there, but we have it correct on the side if you're interested in looking at the venue. What's next, Trista? Questions? Do we have any?
I have one question. Stephen, can you please say IPv6 4 times in a row?
IPv6, 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 IPv6.
Okay, now you're just showing
off.
Okay.
I don't have any questions from our audience, so
well, that's no good.
I think you covered it pretty well.
I'm excited about this product. I'm expecting lots of questions.
Well, I have a question for the participants so they can think about it and maybe get back to us. If there's a topic that they'd like to see for a future webinar from Global Data Vault, if you would please send it to us. You can send it through our social media channels, or you can send it to sales@globaldatavault.com, or, oh, now we have two questions. Look at that. As long as I keep talking, they'll come in. First question, when is Salesforce going to be offered?
We do not have a release date yet. I am expecting it to be offered normally whenever they drop their products, which is normally around November-ish, but we do not have a release date.
And do you have any idea what it looks like?
We have not been given a beta yet.
Okay. This is another
Trace.
challenge for Stephen. Stephen,
I
how
see you,
much wood could a
Trace.
woodcut?
Yeah.
Stephen.
So yeah, I mean, we can determine how much wood a woodchuck could chuck wood if you really want. I mean, we got the old Google over here fired up.
I'm sure there's a script for that.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well,
Are these the
us.
woodchucks from the Geico commercial, or are these real woodchucks?
All right. I think it's my job now to wrap this up and move on.
Yeah, before we wrap it up, Krista, I do want to thank Veeam for throwing an amazing VeeamOn event.
It was epic.
This was over the top. And I would also like to thank the Data Prize executive team, senior leadership team, for joining us out at VeeamOn this year. Thank you guys for coming out. It was amazing seeing you.
Yeah, it was great to have their support and get them to meet all the Veeam folks as well. So, all right. I think that's a wrap for our June webinar. If you have any requests for our July webinar, we'll be putting those wheels in motion later this week. So you can reach out to us and let us know. Like I said, the replay will be available on our YouTube channel, and you can sign up to be notified for future webinars at globaldatavault.com/webinars. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Have a great day.